This is The Extra Mile.
Hi, welcome back to The Extra Mile, everyone. My name's Justin Duncan. I'm here with my illustrious co-host and friend, G5. Hi, George. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
George, we have a special guest today.
We do. We have Jenny Reeger on. She has an amazing story, an amazing testimony, and I thought it'd be great to have her story on, just to uplift us. And her mission and her work, her ministry is super good, and people need to hear about it. So as many people that can hear about your work, the better. Just kind of tell us about yourself a little bit, what you're doing right now, and who you are, and we'll just jump into it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the DFW area, came to Lubbock for college, went to LCU, and worked at a couple different places in Lubbock, one of those being Park Ridge Pregnancy Center. It's a medical clinic that helps women with unplanned pregnancies, and I was actually a client there. And so the ministry just kind of drew me in, and I was able to come on staff and be a volunteer for the last 10 years. And so that kind of got me into this line of work where we felt prompted to open a maternity home, and kind of knew about the need of women needing housing during unplanned pregnancies. And my husband and I formed that ministry last December, and then we have 2 kids, Jude and Josie.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
great. And what was it like working at that pregnancy center there in Dallas?
So it was actually here in Lubbock.
Oh, it is in Lubbock.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Park Ridge, it's on like 82nd and Slide area.
Okay.
It was one of the best jobs that I've ever had. The staff there is just very knowledgeable, they have various credentials to help assist women, but also give that holistic care of just helping them and show the love of Christ to them whenever they're going through a really hard time. So it was amazing. It was also hard to see some of the heartbreak that was going on there, and some of the girls' situations, and even some of the guys' situations that were, walking alongside them with these unplanned pregnancies and
Right.
and various complications that they had.
So I imagine that helped create some of the foundation and framework for your work in the future.
Yes.
And I love that. That's an amazing thing. That's how God works. Sure.
Uh-huh.
I didn't think I'd be selling furniture, but that helped me, talk to people and things like that. So we all have like little niches to, I think, really help move us forward.
Yes.
Sometimes God doesn't, you don't realize it in the moment.
No.
And God's like, well, I got this here in the future for you.
Yeah. I think he works in especially in the waiting.
Yeah.
We're thinking, why am I selling furniture? Why am I, I ran a design business for 5 years, and I loved it, but it felt always like it was not complete or something like that. And then whenever the maternity home idea was brought up by my husband, I thought that's exactly what we're supposed to do. And he had prepared through Park Ridge, through the design business, we had flipped some homes and things like that. We also ran an Airbnb. It just all prepared us for this housing that we were going to set up for these ladies.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And each thing has its skills and its kind of its nicks and crannies that help prepare us for the future. Yeah. I love that. So this Heritage House you opened up in December. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was that? What was that journey there? I know the clinic there helps a lot, but what else?
Yeah. So last May, the Vote for Life was going on in Lubbock, and that bill was passed, and my husband, we were actually studying Isaiah 35 on a Zoom call that we do on Wednesday nights, and he just looked at me after studying that, and I guess the Lord, through Isaiah 35, brought him to tell me that we should start a maternity home. And if you know my husband at all, does not say things like that. He's very he's an Enneagram 9. He doesn't like risks. He's very just servant-hearted. But he's not going to be the first one that's like, hey, we should start a maternity home. And so when he said it, I knew, okay, that he doesn't just say things like that. And it felt like it was from the Lord, and he felt like it was from the Lord too. And so we started to pursue that. It took about 3 months for me to transition from my design work to the thought of the maternity home. And then, so actually that night of the maternity home idea, I sketched out a plan. It was 4 buildings. We sketched it out and thought, okay, we could have 2 houses or 3 houses, or I don't know. For some reason, we thought 4
Right.
buildings. That's what I drew. And then when I was done sketching it out, it was probably 11 o'clock at night. And when you look at the aerial view, it formed the shape of a cross. And Luke and I just looked at each other like, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but there's something here. And, we let it, like I said, it took us about 3 months to kind of think about, what does the Lord have for us? Are we supposed to keep doing design work plus this? Is this an idea for somebody else that we should pass off? And he just made it clear that I was supposed to give up all my design work and just follow the maternity home idea. I'm also an Enneagram 3, so it's hard for me to
Okay.
give up goals that I'm dead set on finishing. So I actually lost my voice during that summer. I cried. The Lord was really, I had to give up that kind of, I don't know if it was an idol per se, but it was just something that wasn't in my plans, and I needed to let go of it. So I was driving around in Lubbock looking for a property for Heritage House. Again, looking for kind of like maybe a 4 building or multiple building kind of model. Didn't really find anything. I thought we might could have somebody build something, going through all these options. And I actually was going to an appointment. I turned down the wrong street, and I was right in front of the former abortion clinic, which is on Indiana and 67th. It was an abortion clinic from 1981 until 2014. I actually had an abortion there in college. And so I knew the property well. Like I said, I've volunteered at Park Ridge for 10 years, working with women who've had abortions, helping them get out of the shame that abortion can bring and into God's forgiveness and freedom. And so, you good, George?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So whenever I was in front of that property, it had a big for sale sign.
Okay.
And I just kind of laughed. I thought, I don't like this idea, God. I don't know. And so I walk around the corner, and sure enough, it was 4 buildings, exactly like I had sketched out. And it had already been remodeled. There's still some things we have to tweak, but yeah, it had been primarily remodeled exactly how we needed. And I knew that was the property God wanted us to pursue for the maternity home.
That's an amazing thing. It's like he led you there.
Yeah.
You gonna say something?
Yeah, I just said wow.
Yeah. Well,
Letting that soak in.
Yeah. No, that is a beautiful story.
I think if you wrote it, it wouldn't be better.
Yeah.
That's so consequential or coincidental. That's the word I meant.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
That's the thing
Very
about
interesting.
coincidences. I think sometimes like God has a hand in these things, right? And he directs our steps. So we just got to be willing to follow. You pointed out Isaiah 35 there at the beginning. Thinking about your mission there, and when it comes to anything, just starting anything new, it can be kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, taking those steps. Following what God wants, in our life and what He's telling us, and you were reading His Word too, and it seems like it was directing you. I mean, that's how we know that we're on the right path. Is okay, this is coming from His Word. It says, they will see the grandeur of the Lord, the splendor of our God, strengthen the hands that have gone limp, steady the knees that shake. Tell those who panic to be strong. Do not fear, in a sense, And that's the type of confidence that God gives us if we're willing to follow Him. And I love that. I love that story there.
Well, thanks, George.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Because during the time that the whole pro-life and the Roe versus Wade thing was going on, that's when I heard about you and your mission. I was talking to my wife, and she was like, "Yeah, this lady named Jenny has this thing." I was like, "Oh, she needs to come on the podcast." And I was like, that needs to happen." And so,
Well, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Now you were saying that this was before you grabbed it was an abortion clinic, right? And that's where you had an abortion. Can you tell us more about that and that story there?
Absolutely. So I was in college at the time, running cross country, and I was involved in a lot of things on campus. I was also brought up in a very conservative Christian home.
Yeah.
I really spent what I call 6 years in the wilderness from about my junior year of high school until the abortion. just living in the wilderness. I never stopped believing in God, but I was not living for him.
I wasn't active.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. It was like, I'm going to church, I'm believing in God, I'm reading Romans. I'm like, why am I doing these things I hate? I was really grappling with it, but temptation was just taking over during this brokenness that was going on in my life. My parents got divorced right in the middle of high school, and I had to move. And
that's hard.
It was a lot of change and brokenness that was going on there. And so I never felt the Lord leave me. I always felt like he was there, and I trusted that he was there. But, I just saw myself making these mistakes. And I was in an unhealthy relationship at the time with somebody who, claimed to be a Christian and all that. And we were doing things that we shouldn't have been doing, and got pregnant, and ended up, he was pretty adamant that we were getting the abortion. And I was feeling pretty vulnerable at that time, thinking, I've never seen myself having an abortion. I've always thought it was wrong. I'm not okay with this, but I don't see another way out. I was living 5 hours away from my parents. Again, they were divorced, so there was some brokenness going on in those relationships. And so I really didn't feel like I had a support system, the financial means to bring a baby, and then my boyfriend didn't want the baby either. So it just felt very lonely and like...
It's devastating.
Yeah, just devastating. And so I went forward with the abortion, but it was one of the darkest moments in my life. And I mean, in the room, I'm not talking about like after, I'm meaning during the abortion, I felt life leave my body on that table. Like I felt like a piece of me died on that table. And I remember the doctor not talking to me. He had a mask on, just very cold. It just felt, everything about it in every aspect felt dark. And I don't know if it's because I was baptized when I was 13, and I believe I have the Spirit living in me, and what I was doing was against the Spirit in such a big way. Right. There's so much more to it than just, cultural, I don't know, ideals of what abortion is. It was very spiritual to me, and it was very clear to me that this was dark, this was evil, this was wrong. And I spent the next 3 years trying to get out of shame. And so I started going to Park Ridge right after the abortion. They had free post-abortion counseling. And so that began a journey of, okay, God's forgiven me. I know he's forgiven me, but how do I know it and feel it? I didn't feel worthy of forgiveness. I did not feel worthy of being redeemed. I knew that was his plan, but it didn't make sense. It's like, nope, I sinned too far. I sinned too far past his plans for me, and I've ruined it, and I can't come back from this. And he was over there saying, you can come back. I'm here. There's redemption for everybody. And my plan is not for you to stay in this prison cell of shame for the rest of your life. It's to accept the freedom that I'm offering you. I offer it to everyone who's willing to come back to me. And through that post-abortion group at Park Ridge, I saw the truth, and I began to have this courage swell up in me that said, I'm going to accept this freedom. I'm going to actually accept it. Not just talk about it, but I'm going to actually be holy again because he says I'm holy. I'm going to be reborn, and I'm going to repent, and I'm going to stop doing these things that have got me to this point. So the abortion was really the straw that broke the camel's back for me of about 6 years of just living in sin is what I would say, blatantly. So
that's a really remarkable story, and there's a lot to that story there. It just the way you describe the abortion clinic too is the opposite of what our culture tells us, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like they like that doctor was hiding behind that mask, likes to hide behind a mask, likes to call things different things and just kind of, find ways to jade ourselves into going places where we shouldn't go as well. And Satan also uses us at very vulnerable points, right? We
Yeah.
look at the story of Job, and Satan's like, well, I can break this man, and I can take away his entire family, and I can, give him illnesses. That's when he'll fall away, right? And that's when he strikes. He uses us when we're vulnerable. But I think Christ gives us that power and that oomph, to, like you were doing, to persevere, to keep going and to endure. There has to be something more than this. I can't live in this cage. I like how you said it, this like cage or prison of shame, and that's what that is.
Yes.
Because that's also a
Yes.
tool of Satan's, is to say, well, there's no way of moving past this because it's shame, and God's never going to forgive you.
Yeah.
And so that's a remarkable story.
Well, thank you. I just feel like Satan is such a deceiver. And that's what I've heard from so many women. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of women who've had abortions over the last 10 years, or just heard their stories through Instagram or through Facebook. And I would say the key word is deceit for all of them. Abortion was supposed to promise me freedom. Abortion was supposed to promise me a different life. And I know that there are women out there who don't have regrets for their abortion, but I do feel like there is a difference in those of us who've been baptized and have taken on the Holy Spirit versus the world. And there is going to be a different reaction to this death. It is a death, and it is against, God's plans for us. And so, and I don't know, I think a lot of women think, well, I've already had sex outside of marriage, so, I need to just hide this or get rid of this. And it really, a lot of women just feel like it's another sin on top of another sin. And it just made things worse versus better. So I just have so much respect for women who are brave enough and courageous enough to have their babies, even if they feel like they sinned and had sex outside of marriage or whatever the situation is.
That is a tough one. That's kind of another thing too. We demonize that, right? Okay, you've fornicated, right? You've had sex outside of marriage, and we've been told our entire life, if you grew up in that, it can be very conservative in a sense, that is horrible. And so, let's hide that. Let's keep that under the rug. Let's not bring that out, because that's going to disappoint my parents. That's going to disappoint God, and we don't want to feel that as well, because we've been living for their approval our entire lives.
Exactly. It goes back to self-preservation. I think it's like, how can I conceal my image, my reputation, the shame, and you just get deeper into the shame and guilt. Whereas, a lot of young ladies that I've spoken with who have had sex already outside of marriage, I encourage them to talk to their parents about it, because those are the people that are going to love and care about them the most. And I know every situation may be different, or just find somebody you can trust who is a believer that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to give you real resources and tools to help you with those temptations when you're younger or older. I mean, we all need accountability. There's not a single Christian that's past, temptation or making an error in judgment at any given moment. And so we just have to put on that armor, find accountability, and
right.
Yeah.
Now, did you tell anyone about when you became pregnant? Did you tell anyone other than your boyfriend?
I told a couple of people. So I actually went to Park Ridge, and they helped me.
That's right, yes.
So I had the ultrasound, and the baby was healthy. And that's when I thought, okay, I've got to talk to this guy about my ex-boyfriend about how are we going to figure this out? Because I saw the baby, like, we can't do this. And every time it was just met with just, there's no way, we're in college. And he has since apologized for everything that happened and all that in a healthy way. We were able to work through that briefly. And that was good closure for me. And it was humbling of him to say, I did put you through a hard time. You're not crazy, whatever.
Right,
it's like,
right.
that was real, right? Like, you question every little thing that you did at that time. And so thankfully I had that closure in that. But yeah, whenever you're feeling pressured into something after the truth, it just feels even more wrong. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. I just love scriptures, and you were talking about shame, and I thought of Isaiah 61:7. It says, instead of shame, you'll get a double portion. Instead of humiliation, they will rejoice over the land they receive. It's talking about the Israelites there, but that's the same promise that we have as well.
Yes.
We can rejoice. We don't have to live in this shame. We don't have to be humiliated. I love that. They'll be experiencing this as a lasting joy, and that's always the case if we draw closer to God. Oftentimes, like you said, that also means drawing closer to the people who are stronger in the faith than us, that see it correctly, that really want us to help. And finding those people and confiding in those people is also, it can be challenging.
It can. I think it takes a lot of humility to come to somebody and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and this is my deepest, darkest secret here. But I really feel like confession helps, and there's something freeing about confession, and there's also something about, sharpening each other that I think takes some humility to be sharpened.
Yeah.
But if we can do it, we're going to be so much better off, and we're going to have a softer heart for people, and also just more of a heart of Jesus, really.
Right.
So.
I think there's also this aspect too that switching perspectives here, right?
Yeah.
If I'm the viewer and I'm viewing your story, and we come from this conservative maybe background, or maybe even a liberal background, doesn't matter. None of those things should matter if we're all united in Christ. But we can demonize people for having abortions as well, and I think sometimes we see that on the news. We get in our political suits, and we get on our sides, and we hold our flags up, and we say we're pro-life. And if you've had an abortion, you're a horrible person. And there's no room in our hearts for compassion. There's no room for our hearts and forgiveness. And Jesus on the cross said, forgive them, for they don't know what they do as well. And he's even the woman that committed adultery and they're in a stone, in John 8, that's correct. Yeah. He said, those without sin cast the first stone. Those are stories that should remind us that Jesus is beyond the sin that we commit, and all about forgiveness. His grace extends in a sense. Just a good reminder for those that might be thinking that's the wrong thought to have.
Yeah, there's mercy and love for everybody.
Right.
And I think the biggest misconception is that when people are speaking out against abortion, and this is something I also have to be careful about because I'm working with women who've had abortions, and it's a very sensitive subject. It takes a lot of courage to come out of that shame prison cell, so to speak, or that little shell that we put ourselves in and say, I've had an abortion. This is how I'm feeling. That takes so much courage, so much vulnerability to do that. And so I am very careful about what I post on Facebook or Instagram in the name of speaking truth, but also speaking the truth in love is so much different than just speaking the truth. And I think you can tell the people, you can see who is actually speaking the truth in love versus people that are just speaking truth. And I can't remember where it is in the Bible, but if you don't have love, it's like a resound.
Oh, yes. First Colossians 13.
Yes.
For Colossians. 1 Corinthians 13. Yes. If you don't have love, it's like a clanging cymbal or a clanging gong. Yeah, you can have all the prophecies and tongues in the world, but love is what gives all those things meaning, right? To your point.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's sort of like if somebody is telling you, hey, abortion's bad, don't do it, they're right. And they may be doing it out of love, but sometimes we can take it as hate, or we can take it as they don't like me or they're judging me. And it's a hard thing. It takes humility to hear the truth, but we also have the responsibility on the other end to speak it in love and be compassionate and kind with people's situations, and not just jump right to, here's what you don't need to do, or here's what you do need to do, and just kind of walk with them through that and earn their trust. And I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, because what we hear often is facts don't care about your feelings.
Exactly.
Sure, but as humans, we should care about other people's feelings, and we're the one delivering the facts, and so maybe we should have a little compassion and love behind what we say when we deliver those things. I think that's an important point to what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And that's really, we can deliver the truth all the time, and that's the amazing thing I think about having faith, is that we have God, Jesus, who is, the truth,
Yeah.
and but also God, who is love, and we can deliver those two at the same time.
Yes.
Because without God, we have no love, and now we're just delivering truth in a factual and hateful way.
Yeah.
And does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it goes so much deeper. I think that's kind of the theme, is kind of like, if you're speaking God's truth, well, we're going to cancel you, or we're going to,
Right.
instead of, we're all filled with the Spirit, we're filled with the Spirit, we're filled with the truth, and we can do it in a loving way.
Yeah.
And that's the key takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. It has
Yeah.
to be in love.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so courageous for you to say what you just said. So thank you for sharing with us and with our listeners. I reflect in my own life choices very similarly. The emotional toll, the shame, all of those elements I experienced myself in the same time period.
Yeah.
And I think that at least I grew up in the church and had hurt in my life that was nothing from my family.
Yeah.
But I think all people experience some type of hurt or pain that the world puts on us.
Yes.
And the world, the devil, the tempter, whatever it is. And that we all have some sort of trauma that we're trying to have healed. And I think we talked about in a previous episode, we're all looking for some sort of salvation.
Yeah, that's true.
Whether that be from a loved one, a friend, parents that were divided, a girl that didn't share a common look, or someone who, a sibling that hated you, or if you went into the very bad places of life experience where there's abuse, there's all sort of horrible things that are happening on this physical plane. And because of that, I think we're all united as humans in this existence of we're all looking for a savior.
Yeah.
And, I think we're all speaking commonly, and hopefully for those listening who might not have found Jesus, that this is very much in the vein of why we believe what we believe.
Yes.
Because Christ's teaching is not what you read on Reddit or any post about how there's such hatred and how Christ calls us to murder. I mean, none of that's true, because the true salvation in Jesus is from a point of love. And he even spoke on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers. Mm. And so how do we find peace? And so in thinking of your story, and it seems that you have a very healthy look on that moment in your life. And once again, thank you for sharing. Yeah. And when you said it was one of the most cold experiences, and I immediately thought of the prodigal son. Mm-hmm. And would you actually do me a favor and look up Luke?
Yeah, sure.
So from that story where you almost feel so detached from everything that's going on in life. Yeah, the sun's coming up, but do you have the ability to see it? Mm-hmm. It almost feels like your entire existence is veiled with this cloud that's something that's over you. And I know we all are experiencing that sometime in our life. And, Job definitely experienced it, what you brought up earlier, where, if everyone's dead around you that you loved and everybody's telling you to curse God and all that, where if you find yourself in a situation in your own life where you basically are alone, there's no one that you can talk to. And if you feel that, that's where the prodigal son found himself, is that he took his, do you have it, George?
Yeah, verse 3. The prodigal son here.
Luke 15.
Yeah. Let's see.
Well, essentially, and if you'll find sort of the passage where he has a realization where he basically, summarizing the story, he takes his inheritance early, he leaves, and he goes into the world. And I think we all have to experience that. We all have to leave our parents. And for some of us, we went to school, and mom and dad weren't there to wake us up.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it says he went to go work, one of the citizens of a country who sent him out to the fields to feed the pigs, and he was longing to eat the carob of pods the pigs were eating. And so there's that dissatisfaction, that hunger, that loss there.
So in this story, Jesus in this parable tells about the rock bottom moment, where you have that self-realization of there is nowhere for me to turn, and I am alone to my thoughts. And if you find yourself in that situation, the takeaway from not only the prodigal son, but as well as your story and many other stories that can be recounted, is that you either continue to look to yourself for salvation, or a loved one, a friend, whoever, or you can look to God.
Yeah.
And when you look toward God, it gives me such courage to hear your story, to say, okay, there's good things working. You had direction, and it probably led to increased study of God's word and knowledge of the scriptures. And we talked about that this morning, where in our previous episode that we recorded, about how in John 6, Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. And that the concept that he's teaching is to always consume me, and you'll never be hungry. And I even went back to the Greek word in the study, and it's a trogo, it's to chew or to gnaw. And so the concept is, how do you gnaw constantly at the heavenly bread that you'll never hunger again? And the parallels are to put Christ on in your heart.
Yeah.
And so from your own story, I think that's 100% evident, and that's what you did. And for you to be able to have walked through that door, which we all walk through some sort of door of sin. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
We have all at least sinned once.
Right.
For some, it's a catastrophic sin, or for some, it's many, many, many. In this spiral of self-hatred and sin and death and whatever the atrocities that you can think. But we all have sinned once. And so for that, we're all equalized again. And so we must find compassion for each other. We must find love, because not only is it commanded, but that's the better way. And it's such a wonderful thing to dedicate one's life to reach out to other women and couples that find themselves in that situation and say, this is where I was, I have experienced that, and this is how I got out of it. I want to help if you allow me. And to approach any situation, whether it be abortion, whether it be fornication, whether it be lying or stealing or murder, or any of these other atrocities that are sin and take us away from God, take us toward ourself, to go back toward love, and to reach out as a Christian, to reach out into the world and say, I love you. And then as Christ in John 8, as we were saying, is that the conclusion of that story is no one was there to throw a stone. And so he says, woman, where are your accusers? Well, they're all gone. And he says, and I don't accuse you either. Go and sin no more. And so I think that's the conclusion, at least, of that story.
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing. It really encouraged me in sort of my own life, because, man, I reflect exactly what you just said, finding that loneliness, turning toward God, desiring to read the Word and know who God is, and then be embraced by compassion and love from someone perhaps within the faith that encouraged me to then come back to God.
It's a scary place to be so dark and so low and so alone and so in your sin. I think in the same vein of the prodigal son, I wonder if he was just afraid of how low, and there was no lower he could go.
Yeah.
And the father was there to reach out his hand in love. And, the brother was over there, upset about it. And you can see the heart of the father versus, it's not all about what we deserve. It's about that what we don't deserve is love in a hand. What the world is going to say that we deserve is a stone thrown at us,
Exactly.
or not to be let back in. And I also think in the same vein of the prodigal son story, he was turning to the ways of the world. He was deceived in that beginning. You can choose the path of the creator, or you can choose the path of the deceiver. There's really not one way or the other. And you can see the path of the deceiver was wasting all of his money, going down that road of just worldly temptations and indulgences. And the road back to the Father was hard. It took humility. It took, some reflection, but he came back. He did the right thing in the end, and he was rewarded for that. And I think it's just such a reflection of our own lives. So right. I love that story.
After the fact, did you feel an acceptance and love from not only God, but from the brethren as well?
Absolutely. So it did take me a couple years to share my story
Sure.
To other people. But once I did, that initial fear, I think the first time I shared was to about 150 people at a fundraising event. And I was very nervous. And I thought, okay, worst case scenario, they all look at me like I'm a sinner. Best case scenario is there's fruit that comes from this. And I'm not saying that no one has ever judged me upon hearing my story, but again, it's a true reflection on them and not me.
Exactly.
I share my story because I'm excited about the freedom and the love and the redemption story that God offers all of us. Like you said, it doesn't have to be an abortion. You don't have to have had an abortion to be redeemed. We all need redemption. We all want redemption, and we all can have redemption. It's just, what are the steps that we're going to take to get there? And so after I shared that story, I had probably 20 people or so come hug me who also had abortions, who were living in secret, not sharing those things. There's so many people who are hiding their abortions in secret. And, if there's any listeners out there that have had one, I would just encourage you to get help, to talk to somebody about it, because when you do, there's just so much freedom on the other side. And it's hard to do, but it's worth it, and it's rewarding.
Is it because there's now a community surrounding you? Because what you just said is that you were alone. It seemed, story-wise, is that you were alone. You were about to tell that you had an abortion. And then these collective of women came and shared their story. And now you have this surrounding you, an entire collective of people that's, you can share your shame. You can share the path to healing.
Yes.
That's exactly why it tells us to confess our sins to each other.
Yeah, it's a communion.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not meant, we're not meant to be alone. And I think we think that in a sort of fellowship sense of the word, which is a good thing. Fellowshipping is good. But I also think communion is about sharing in the dark stuff so that we can help each other and spur one another on to redemption and healing and all that. And so I think I've shared my story to roughly like 15,000 people at this point. And there has not been a single time where somebody has tried to throw a stone at me or call me, some sort of name, out of those thousands of people that have heard my story. And so I would just encourage anybody out there that's afraid or living in fear to share and watch what the Lord does, because it will exceed your expectations abundantly.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So go ahead.
But it seemed that event has now sparked much godly inspired work. Right. So maybe we can talk about that.
Yes.
No, I mean, that's what pain does, right? Even though it's not very fun to go through at first, it does move us, and it progresses us forward.
Yes.
And it pushes us in directions that are uncomfortable, but also freeing at the same time if we're willing to, follow Christ, follow the light. And so that kind of pushed your story there to Heritage House, which I think is amazing. You took this place where you had an abortion and you changed it, you redeemed it, you took it and you made it for something good, and that's an amazing thing. That's what God can do. He take some of the worst evils, and He can always, because He's infinitely good, bring good out of it. And I love what you did with the Heritage House.
So this is kind of a new venture. You said December.
Yes.
What's the mission of Heritage House?
So our mission is to help single pregnant women with transitional housing and a support system. And so we want women who may not want to have an abortion, but they don't see another way, provide them with real resources that are actually, tangible and physical, and they have people in their lives that are going to pour into them and see it through. Our little tagline is "Together we will see it through," and so that's our goal. Is that for every single woman that comes in, we'll see it through with them. One of the cool things, you're kind of talking about redemption in the vein of that. we got our survey back from the property. And like I said, it's 4 buildings. And we noticed something unusual. Every single building it's a different size, or it's a different shape, it's a different layout, but they were all the same size. Down to the square foot, they were all 1,353 square feet. And so we looked it up in the Hebrew Concordance. 1,353 means redemption.
That is so cool.
Or
wow.
Gula, or it's Gelluh. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that, but and then the first reference of that word is in Leviticus, talking about the redemption of land or property.
Yeah.
And so we
Wow,
just
so
felt the Lord, like that was just a little sign from him to say, we are redeeming this place. And even though we didn't set out to, hey, let's buy an abortion clinic and redeem it, that wasn't our plan. It was his plan. And it took several months for us to see it. But once we saw it, the evidence was just there. I mean, we felt like we had some pretty big goals for being able to purchase the property. We got the funding within about 3 weeks of reaching out to some people. And so, I mean, just unheard of things. Even the guy at the bank was like, this doesn't happen. Like the interest rate they're giving you, all this different stuff. I mean, the Lord was just advocating for us. All of the fears that I had, all of the unknowns he provided in ways that were just unexplainable. And so we went from putting an offer on the property in September to purchasing it in December. We have a great architecture firm, our contractor, they're both working pro bono to see this thing through with us. And so we're hoping to open at the end of the year. We're kind of at the discretion of the city on some things, because it is different with occupancy codes and things like that. So we're learning a lot, but I'll also go to a maternity home conference in September. So just learning from other people who've done it for years, who are passionate about this, who can help us. We're definitely trying to look to other believers who've already been there and can help us. So
Do you have a 501c3 status?
we have applied, and,
Yeah.
and we're just waiting
We-
on the IRS.
Yeah, I
that's how it
had
goes.
one for an arts organization I was starting, and we're waiting for the IRS to get back to us too.
It's rough.
Well, the pandemic, they kind of ruptured all of their timelines. So,
Yep.
well, good luck with that. I hope you
Thank
get the
you.
501c3, because that brings a lot of benefits with
Yes.
regarding to donations and things like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, we'd appreciate your prayers. We're excited, but we're at the discretion of some higher up people, and so we pray for provision there.
It seems like God opened the doors all the way to this point. I think he's gonna
see it
keep
through.
going. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's an amazing thing.
Thank you.
Thinking way ahead in the future, if that's what you do, what are some future aspirations you have for this?
Oh, that's a good question. So definitely would love to expand eventually to help. Right now, we can only help single pregnant women that don't have kids just because of square footage reasons. I would love to be able to help them with housing after they leave. And that's something that we are working toward currently. Just there are so many people through the community of Lubbock specifically who have messaged us and said, hey, I'm a doula, I can help with some of this, or I was I'm a nurse, worked in the NICU for 20 years, or we do investment properties, or we know an apartment complex that can maybe give the girls a discount, or I do childcare and I would love to help with these women when they go back to work, or somebody who's worked in HR who can help them apply for jobs. There are just so many different aspects, and we're going to need just as many people as we can to really give them that full care that we think that they're looking for, or that could benefit them. And so I know each woman will be different and come with different things as they come up, but we want to help them as much as they need. So
That's
connect them
amazing.
with some resources.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. I think that's a very bright future, and I'm hoping it works. How can people help? You told me that if they have skills, they contact you and let you know. I think that's amazing.
Yes.
But do you need anything else? How can other people help? Do you need donations? Where can we donate? Things like that.
Yes, we definitely need donations for just our general operating costs, especially at the end of the year. So, or anytime is great. We'll take donations anytime. But specifically at the end of the year is when we'll be opening and have the most expenses coming up. And so our website is heritagehouselbk.org. So you can donate there. We also have a Venmo that's just at Heritage House.
Okay.
trying to think. And then my email address is heritagehouselbk@gmail.com. So I would love to just connect with as many people as I can. And yeah, we're excited.
Perfect.
So.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on. It was I loved it. I love the story. I love what you're doing. And we want to work together with you. We want to help you any way we can. And I pray that if you're listening, you can be encouraged to tell your story. You can, if you feel that shame, there is freedom, and Christ has freed us from that shame too. And we can move forward, and we can always be redeemed, and our lives and our progress can also be used for good. And anything else you want to add to that?
Oh, you're throwing to me. Wow.
I'm throwing to you.
Well, we're going to talk about our sponsors. Oh. No, I don't know. No, I just, once again, thank you for your courage coming on. And you've told the story many times, and I think that's, it provides such encouragement for people who are perhaps in that moment in their life, and that there's an alternate path. Would you say, just really briefly, that you had a different choice?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think you can always look back and see the way out.
Yeah.
And you're always going, or at least me, I always regret not taking that way out. I live with regret just because I've been redeemed and I feel free. I will always regret that choice, and I will always wish I could go back.
Well, that's sin. And I think everybody feels that.
Yep.
And, but it's encouraging to hear that even in your darkest time, that God provided a way out. Now, it's also your choice. He gives us free will, so we get to choose what we do. And but God will always take our bad choices, and He will at least provide the opportunity for good to happen, for future good choices.
Yes.
So,
and I think that's where peace comes in.
Awesome.
Even though you regret that sin, you have peace because He's been able to use it for His glory. And if we point everything back to His glory and what good can He do from this, I can't go back and change my decision, but I can go forward and live in the grace and mercy that He's provided me and give Him the glory for that, and anticipate the day that I get to be reunited with my baby in heaven. This is bearable because I'm going to get to go to heaven and do that. And so, I just anticipate and look forward to that day, but the waiting can seem long. So
the waiting can seem long, and I think sometimes we think time is our enemy, but we become time's enemy when we decide to move backwards, when we decide to go against it, because it's always moving forward. And what's amazing, we serve a God, we serve Christ who's beyond time, and He's waiting there at the end for us, and we just got to be willing to move forward with it. Ephesians 1:7, as we close, says, "In Him we have redemption," that's Jesus, "through His blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace." Thank you so much for telling us your story. If you're wanting to get involved, reach out to Jenny. She has amazing ministry with Heritage House. Look into it and help support her. Thank you so much. Go so.